Well, I'm Prakash, or PK, and this is the senior class from Mount Madonna School in California. We're traveling to India as part of our Values and World Thought program that we have, or class that we take. And we have a project which is called Vidya Dharma, which we translated to as the path to knowledge. So that's our goal of this trip, as you could say. So we do have questions prepared for you, but if you'd like to make any opening remarks, we'd love to hear them.
Well, the opening remark is thank you very much for coming, and it's a pleasure to be with you and a pleasure to feel that you're interested in Tibetans, Tibetan culture, Tibetan people. So thank you for coming. And I think your trip is a wonderful trip, and you have a very good focus on your trip, which is Vidya Dharma. I think that's very wonderful. So yes, thank you for coming, and we'll start with your questions.
My name is Susie, and in talking about fundamentalism and violence and conflicts around the world, you said, our true power comes through understanding and tolerance. Would you talk more about this idea and why you think it's effective?
The power of nonviolence, right? I feel that the power of nonviolence is the biggest power on earth, because that power lives on. And it's a difficult path, because it's difficult to be nonviolent and patient all the time, especially when this whole world is going around being very impatient and trying to get the better of the other. Then you tend to get carried away by those kind of notions, and then those who are sticking to nonviolence and patience, sometimes you might be made a fool of yourself by them. But I think that's the last thing one should feel. And I think the power of nonviolence, you can see it more today than ever before, because you look around and those who did not take on the path of nonviolence, where have they got? Nowhere. All they've done is destroy things, people, objects, and everything, and burn buses and cars and houses, and that really has no end. Therefore, I think power of nonviolence is very, very important, and I think we should not be discouraged by the environment, by the negative environment, which often leads us into being violent and impatient. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. What do you think are the essential values of Tibetan culture that are of most benefit to the world we live in today?
Tibetan culture actually comes from Buddhism. Okay, if you look into Tibetan culture and Buddhism, try to study the two together, there's a lot of interconnection. And I personally feel that most of it really came from Buddhism. And within the Tibetan culture also, there are those which are very relevant to Buddhism, but there are those which are also not very relevant. But whatever, between the two of it, it really created a culture of peace, nonviolence, kindness, and patience. And I think ever since the Tibetans took on that path in Tibet, Tibet became very, very peaceful. And it became so peaceful, so kind, so considerate, that then the neighbors started taking advantage of us. That's how exactly we lost our country, because we never had a guard on the borders. We were not prepared militarily, because we believed in peace and nonviolence. And also that comes from Tibetan culture or Buddhism. And so your question is, what can we give to the world from our culture? I think if we try to preserve our culture, which I often tell our young people and our people also, that our culture is nothing different from any other culture that believes in kindness and altruism, which also comes from Christianity and all the other religions. It's just that we have forgotten most of it. And Tibetans, so far, because we were so isolated, because, in one way, we were isolated and we were able to preserve this wonderful culture, but in a way, we lost a lot of the modernity. However, now that we are thrown out of Tibet the way we are, I think we are able to show the world remnants of what the world had many centuries ago. So I think if we could give this culture of kindness, peace, and altruism, that's something that we could. But I also hope that in giving that to the others, let's hope we don't lose it. We could also lose it because we are just a drop in the ocean now. We are in this world which is so full of things that we really don't want, and it's difficult to really keep to it. But my belief is that Tibetans don't need to have wealth, nuclear weapons, or technology, but if you really preserve what we have and share it with the rest of the world, that's something the world needs today. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Soma. So in your biography, we read about how much loss you've suffered, and I was just wondering how you continue to have faith in humanity when some of the most important things in your life have been taken away from you.
I think it's been very, very difficult for most of our people. But the wonderful thing that made us a little bit different from the others is mainly because of our leadership from His Holiness, who leads us and says, don't sit back with your hands crossed. Let's make the best of what you have. And best of what we had was our life. We were not dead. So we came out of our country without anything, but we were alive. So we learned to be happy in being alive. And then also, as she said, the basic point of Buddhism is everything is impermanent. You could have so much today, and tomorrow, who knows whether you'll have that or not. Look what's happened to Japan. Nobody knew that was going to happen. So I think in that way, our philosophy of Buddhism, the concept of Buddhism really helped us to carry on, because we were not crushed, we were not, what you call, desperate. And so, of course, I would say that we really suffered. Our parents and grandparents, they really didn't know what to do when they came to India. They didn't know the language, they couldn't cope with the heat, they didn't know how to cook many of the vegetables that they were not used to. I mean, all these problems were there. It really was very, very, very difficult. But I think the concept of Buddhism, or philosophy, whatever you call it, that really helped us. To the extent that, I'll just share this with you, that many, many years after that, in fact, about 10 years ago, another prisoner from Tibet came out, a monk, and he was imprisoned for more than 20 years, and he really suffered in the prison. But when he met His Holiness, he was a wonderful monk. So His Holiness asked him, what was your most difficult time in the prison? And His Holiness said he expected him to say he was beaten, he was tortured, this and that. No, he said, the most difficult time I had in the prison was I thought I might lose compassion on the Chinese. So that kind of concept actually really keeps you alive. So yes, it was difficult, but I think our philosophy helped us. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lily. Nehru once said, you can tell the status of a nation by looking at the status of its women. Aside from the Nuns Project, what would you say could be told of the Tibetan culture from the status of its women today?
Yeah, again, see, Tibet jumped many centuries, okay? After we came to India in 1959, everything changed so rapidly, including status for women. Before that, in Tibet, the status for women was not very apparent. It was like anywhere else, Even America, even other countries also went through a lot of difficulty to get where you are today. So similarly, in Tibet, the women were not educated because they thought boys get education, girls need not be educated. The boys did this, girls shouldn't do that. That concept was very much there. But on a deeper level, I feel that, again, the concept of Buddhism really helped people to be more open. So basically, I think Tibet as a nation was very open towards women and women's rights. It's just that it was dormant and people never spoke about it, and women just carried on with things as they were. and nobody really asked whether they were happy or not. And then I feel that they themselves never asked. But the moment they started, coming out of that particular situation, there was not much of an objection from the male side. And then also from the parents' side, when they were told to educate their girls, they didn't ask any questions. They just started sending them to school. And so I think the concept of Buddhism really helps you to be more open, and particularly when it comes to men and women. It's, we talk about sentient beings. So when you talk about all sentient beings, how could you not talk about women as an entity? So that way, I think it was easier for the Tibetan community to change when it comes to women's issues. And therefore, after coming into, in Tibet also, I must share this with you, that, women could be very successful businesswomen. They could also run their estates, and they could also run their family businesses if they didn't have any boys in the family. Again, to me, this speaks very loudly, because you don't look for a boy to run your family or carry on your family traditions. If you had a girl and no boy, they would get the husband to come to the girl's family and take the girl's family name. Now in Tibet, if somebody's husband died and she remarried, there was no question about it. It was taken very naturally. And then also, if there was a split in the family, there was no question about everything being equal. So I feel that all these are good indications of, if people had worked, if women had worked harder, even from the ancient times, things could have been much more apparent. But however, everything started changing very rapidly in exile, because again, His Holiness really emphasized on the equality of men and women. And therefore, today we have boys and girls equally educated, and girls are holding equal positions in the parliament, in the cabinet, in the NGOs. So it's become very, very pleasant. Of course, there's still flaws, and I would call that human flaws, not a flaw of a nation or men and women, but it's human flaw. Because I think a nation can be happy, harmonious, and power can be equal only when men and women regard each other as companions, respect each other, and accept each other's shortcomings as well as qualities. So that is a human problem, and I would not say that's not there, even in America, So we have to all work towards that. For example, I'm working for the Nuns Project, as you know, and in the Nuns Project, when I deal with the nuns' issues, firstly, there was no education for the nuns in Tibet. Therefore, we don't have any scholars as nuns today, but we are in the process of making them. And again, the other clear indication is when we started doing this, there was no qualms from any side. They all thought, oh, the nuns are doing well, they're studying well, that's wonderful, things like that. But when it comes to giving the real degree, some people started making little difficulties. And that, I feel, is not because of the system or the country, but it's individual ego. So if there is a very egoistic person in a very powerful position, that makes all the difference, right? However, His Holiness has again said that as far as studies are concerned, if the nuns have studied, they deserve the degree and they will get it. So yesterday was a wonderful time for the Tibetan nuns, because one of the Westerners, she's from Germany, she had studied here for about 16 years, and she was one of those who got the degree yesterday. So I was so happy that a woman got it. Right? We didn't go demonstrating and saying we need it, but I knew that it was going to come, and so it's come. Now, on the highest ordination part, because I better tell this to you all, because you're somehow going to hear a little there, and then it confuses people. I don't want to sound that our community has no faults or everything's perfect, which is why I said earlier that there are flaws, And again, in the religious section, when it comes to highest ordination, the women don't have it. Our nuns don't have that yet. And we are also working very hard towards that, because His Holiness has again expressed his wish that they should have the highest ordination for the women as well in our system. This is not because the men really objected it or really stopped it, but the lineage never went to Tibet. So it's taking a little longer because we are doing a lot of research as to say how we could revive that in the Tibetan community. So I think we are going through a very, very exciting time. And one of the things that we are really working hard is on this, that the nuns should also get the highest ordination. So yeah, so if all this happens, then what you say, how the women are looked at or nurtured in the country shows the quality of the nation. I do believe in that, and I hope all these will make a difference. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Emma. And I imagine that what you and others are doing for the Nun projects takes sacrifice. So if this is true, I'm curious to know what values come to an individual from personal sacrifice.
Personal sacrifice. Well, I think it depends on what you are sacrificing for, right? And one's motivation has to be clear, clean, and then also what you sacrifice for has to be worthwhile. You know, like I'm not saying that I'm sacrificing anything, but working hard for the nuns, I feel, is a very worthwhile cause because it opens so many minds to the truth. I'm not a teacher, I'm not a philosopher, I don't know anything to teach them. But I know I can help them by providing them facilities, somewhere to live, a teacher to teach them, and somebody behind them to say, go ahead, it's a worthwhile thing. So to me, this is my little way of choosing what to do. And I wouldn't call it a sacrifice because I believe in this. And I know that if I had chosen to sit somewhere and study Buddhism and study the philosophy, it's just one person. But if I did this for many people, it will be so many people's mind opening. So I chose this. I wouldn't call it a sacrifice, but I call it a cause worth giving my time. So yeah, if it's worthwhile, then you won't feel like I've been giving my time, now 20, 30 years going on for the Nuns Project. And my service for them has been totally from my heart, free. And I feel that this way my life becomes more worthwhile. Yeah.
I'm PK. So as someone who's fighting for the equality of nuns and going against the practices of many generations, you must face some pretty large challenges. So I was wondering if you could just talk about some of the major obstacles that you face.
Well, I wouldn't call it obstacles as such, because I think, again, because of His Holiness having opened people's mind towards it, saying it'll be good if they had it, I think this itself has really driven away a lot of negative forces. Now, when you really deal with it in a deeper level, then you'll come to know exactly who is highly developed and who isn't, spiritually. Because those who are highly developed, they're all willing to really say, how could we go about this? It will be good if the nuns also had the highest ordination. But there are those who are not themselves very highly developed, therefore they can't see things clearly, and they say, oh, this was never there before, and you can't just revive it like that. In any case, if the nuns had it, there are so many vows that they have to keep. Do you think they'll be able to keep? And things like that. So I don't personally call it a struggle, but it's very interesting to watch people's inner development when a subject like this comes up. No matter what others might say, but I'm very happy to pursue this matter for the nuns. And I shall do that as long as I live. And I don't mean to challenge anybody, nor do I mean to even say, this is our right, I don't say that, because I know that being able to keep get the ordination and keeping all the vows, we are contributing to the humanity by trying to make better human beings. So if anybody stops us from doing that, I think it's their problem. We'll continue doing this. And then if it's one day, if it becomes available, I don't know. As I said, this is a very, very sacred subject, and it has to be linked with the Buddha's time itself. And I'm just hoping that, all these scholars and those who have studied so much, those who have really contemplated so much, will come out with a good result for the nuns. And from my side, I just pray, and I'm myself willing to really go on as far as we need to. And most importantly, when and if it becomes possible, available, I hope the nuns who take it will be worthy of it. And then I also, in fact, keep telling the nuns, we are really struggling for the highest ordination, but don't wait for that to be available. Start from today. You feel as though you have all of it, because, it's just a matter of ceremony that you get it. So that's how I look at it. And then I tell the nuns, you keep your precepts till today, you have certain amounts, keep them well. Then you'll be ready for more and higher. Otherwise, if you don't live today by the precepts, how could you even talk about higher? So this is my way of going, and I really hope and pray that it'll be available for the nuns, because I think that'll make a lot of difference to the humanity if women started pursuing in spiritual development, because it's not easy. If I ask one of you young ladies to become a nun today, I think you'll have to think very hard to be a nun, isn't it? So I think those who have become nuns, they've really given up a lot to be in the path they are in, and I think they deserve to be helped and to be pushed and lifted and all of this until they're really, strong enough to do it themselves. Like anything in this world, any good thing, if more women are involved, it lives longer. Like in the environmental issues, you just look at everywhere. When you have a conference, there are more women taking part in that. And then if you look at it, even household things, there are more women who are taking keen interest to say, this garbage should go there, this should not be thrown there. So when women take an interest, I'm not saying that the men don't take interest or they don't do a good job, I don't mean that. But the more responsibility is given to the women and the more appreciation is given to what they're doing, I think every good thing will live much longer. And similarly, if there are more women in the Dharma who have higher and the higher ordination, I think it even will help the Dharma to live. Because there's a very funny saying somewhere that they say, if there are too many nuns, it's not good for the Dharma. And I keep telling them, show me where it is. Where is it written? How come it is even repeated? Because it doesn't make sense at all. I think if more women take on spiritual pursuit and become nuns, and with the skill of a teacher or health worker or even a counselor, I think it'll be so much more effective, because then your example will be rubbed to the children, to the people that you're associating with, and therefore I think it's very important to have more and more women in this pursuit. Yeah. Did I answer?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm James.
Mm-hmm.
Given the current extremity of the Tibetan culture, in general, do you ever face criticism for trying to promote change in the midst of the larger crisis in Tibet?
No, I think to introduce change anywhere is very difficult. People are very, very obstinate, and they're so stuck and used to the old ways that it's difficult to change. And similarly, Tibetans, it's very difficult to change. But on the other hand, if you change for the better, and if people see it's yielding better result, then people take on. So for the last many, many, many years, His Holiness has been introducing all the changes in the Tibetan community slowly, 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 like democracy and being ruled by, yourselves. All these concepts were totally alien to the Tibetans. So he managed, and it took a long time for the people to get where we are today. And then, on the other hand, I think even in the Tibetan culture, there are certain aspects which make no sense. Really, no sense at all. So I think we should be open to change them. According to every teacher that teach us, they say, don't have blind faith. And Buddha himself said, don't take my words for words unless you have checked it and realized it. Like he said, check my words 9 times, like the goldsmith checks gold before he makes that into something else. So Buddha has given us this wisdom or the attitude to check even religion or philosophy, whatever you call it. So you should not take it as it comes. And I'm hoping that the younger generation will learn to discuss things and really ask questions and get the bottom of the truth. So that way, yes, certain changes are difficult. But in terms of China, nothing we do will make sense to them. Whether it's old, new, good, bad, whatever, for them, anything Tibetan makes no sense to them. And we don't care, because we're not here to please them. And we don't want to make changes just to please them. So I think what is the truth will prevail eventually. And even if the Chinese government opens their eyes to the truth, the sooner they do, the better for all of us. Have I answered your question? Okay.
Hi, my name is Devin. It seems obvious that what the Chinese government, to say the least, is morally wrong and criminal, yet the world stands by seemingly helpless. When our governments are powerless, how do we as the people make a difference?
Yes, this is very important. I think things are happening the way it is happening all over the world because the people lack moral courage. And so does the world, because they don't have moral courage to stand up to Chinese government and say that this is what you're doing wrong. Nobody has done that till now. Ever since China opened, everybody is all out to please them. And also, you only look for gains for yourself. And that's the problem. Like we talked about nonviolence and being patient, this is exactly what it is. People go for the quicker gain, faster gain, and they forget everything else. Like the world has been really seeing nothing but the market in China for the last so many years. And then they didn't have the moral courage to say, I don't think you should do that. Because they feel if they said it, then they lose this. So that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem everywhere. And of course, we are the sufferers as of today. We know that, and we see that more because maybe those who are not suffering as we are doing don't see that as much as we do. But we knew this from many, many decades ago. And then when America gave First Nation status to China for the first time, we were all so against it. And how could America do that? We didn't want China and America to fight, but we thought the strength of America could correct China. And then all of us become good members, human community members, and then make the world a better place to live. But nobody did that. It went on and on and on, to the extent that now when you travel everywhere, you see nothing but Chinese goods, right? So now the repercussions are starting, because in the countries, your own people don't have any jobs, and then all these cheap products are coming in, and this is all result of short-sightedness and lack of moral courage, and also selfishness, right? So to improve that, we have no way to tell the leaders what to do, but I think you all choose the leaders. You have the right to choose who to choose. And then I suppose eventually every leader, once they come up there, they become more or less the same, isn't it? Before they get the votes, they say, if you choose me, I'll do this, I'll do that. Everybody gets so carried away about that. But then once they're comfortable in their position, they forget all their promises. And this is everywhere. So I personally feel that you all are the wealth of future. And you have this opportunity to now go to other parts of the world, hear people, see people suffering, poverty, all of this. I think this should really give you a lot of vision, insight for a better world. And I think that's the only way. You know, I have so much faith in the younger people, because you all are more educated, more exposed. Like your grandparents, I don't think they had as much exposure as you all are having today. So the exposure, the education, all of this, if it works in your mind for the benefit of humanity, then we have a better chance. Otherwise, you look everywhere, it's like that. And of course, we as Tibetans are going through a very critical period of our history. Our people are suffering inside Tibet. They long to be free and to be first citizens in their own country. But what to do? They don't have it. So all we do is what we can. We are trying to be their voices and tell everybody what's happening there. And they are trying their level best to let the Chinese government know that we are not happy. So more than that, we can't do anything. So it's very, very difficult. But on the other hand, because of this situation, we also get the chance to see the whole world and where what is not going right. So I personally feel that, you know, as a Tibetan, I must give my life for the cause of Tibet. But as a human being, I think we should all work together for a better world. And that's the only way. That's the only way. And I think the better world will come when people are less selfish, less greedy, and really caring for each other in the true sense of caring. Otherwise, nowadays, you look everywhere, you know, these words are very attractive, you know, caring for people, compassionate, all of this. But when it really knocks at your door, it's very difficult to open it, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what I would say, yeah. Remember this, and when you become the president, you think of me.
Yeah. We noticed in your research that you make a distinction between the common people of China and the current regime. Do you think it's possible for the people of China to change the government and its policies?
I'm sure it's possible, because after all, nobody can really subdue human nature forever. And I think it's happening in many parts of China that people are not happy, they feel something is missing, and they're beginning to move. It's just that the government is right now so oppressive, and they have really controlled the people so much that it's difficult. But then you also, amidst all the difficulties, you also have people who criticize their own government, and also there are people who are writing pieces saying that the way Chinese government has treated the issue of Tibet is totally wrong. You know, these things are happening. So I look at it as a light in the tunnel. And if people in China are not happy, how could they go on like that? It's bound to burst one day. And I think it's going to. Okay? And then on the other hand, I think the leadership in China is living in a, like we say, fool's paradise. They think that the propaganda of how much China has progressed economically, how happy they are, is going to make people happy. But I think people have deeper sense and they can see what's not right. And then on the other hand, they can also see what the leadership is doing, actually for the sake of the people. All they are doing in some ways is just looking after themselves, accumulating wealth and covering up their faults this way and that way. So I'm very hopeful that it's not going to live like that forever, even for the sake of the people of China. Yeah.
I'm Danny. We're being taught that with privilege comes responsibility, and also that it's an interconnected and interdependent world. And as some of the most privileged, we're generally cut off from the suffering of others. How do we counteract the separation that allows people to ignore the suffering of others?
I think one has to be really, like we were discussing, human nature is nothing but kindness. The deeper human nature is very, very kind and very, very considerate, very, very altruistic. It's just that when our selfish nature comes in, that all gets diminished, and then you see nothing but yourself. And when that happens, then you don't see the suffering of the others. You only see yourself suffering. Everything you do, you might have $1 million today, but then you're suffering because you want $10 million. So you don't have time to see a pauper who doesn't have $1. So when you're too focused on your own needs, that prevents you from seeing other people's sufferings, I think. And the less we think about ourselves, the more we see other people's sufferings. In the process, the more happy you are. Yeah, I think so.
So in one way, being happy is the best antidote to isolation.
Absolutely.
By seeing and connecting.
Yes, and when you say happy, I think we also have to recognize what's really happiness. Because we often think, if I had a house like this, I'll be so happy, This is just human nature. You have a house like that with 20 rooms, each room having the most modern decoration and this and that. You live in that house for 3 years, and you'll start seeing other houses which are even better than that. So it's not the houses that are better, but it's yourself. So again, you thought you'll be happy in that big house. You're not happy. So that's a happiness, temporary happiness, which doesn't live long. So if you want permanent happiness, I think you start live simple and live for others. That'll give you, I think, a happiness that will really carry you a long way. Yeah. And I think nowadays it's so difficult to live simple, isn't it, for many people? And then I think even being simple needs a lot of courage. Because when your neighbor has the most fashionable car, don't feel ashamed to go in your very old-fashioned car. Because that's what really gets everybody working hard to get that kind of a car, and there's no end to it. But look at the purpose of the car. The purpose of the car is to take me from here to there. My car is in perfect condition. It won't drop, it won't stop on the way. That's fine. Oh, that's a nice car, so-and-so has, very nice, but I'm happy with this. So I think if we train ourselves thinking like that, then maybe we'll have more time to think about more valuable things. Otherwise, we are so caught up doing things that'll give you more things and more possession and more so-called fame. And therefore, I think being simple is important, but to be simple, you need a lot of courage. Perseverance and courage, yeah.
Hi, I'm Michaela. As young individuals facing many global problems, do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, I think what we've been discussing till now is telling us how to face the world. Be focused on the right values, and be courageous to carry it on. Just because your neighbors are not doing that doesn't mean you give up. And I think it's very important for like-minded people to get together. Like-minded people is very, very important, because then you know that you're not the only one. Then it rolls on like a snowball. And then good things take shape that way. It takes time, but it takes shape. So the more it does, the more encouraged you get. And I don't see any reason why all of you should not be doing things like that, because you're so well equipped, you're well exposed, you're well educated, and you're talking about higher values the way we're doing today, which my generation didn't have the opportunity to talk about until much later. So the sooner you get to talk and get exposed to these subjects, the sooner you're supposed to change yourself into a better human being. And you need, I think, how to face this problem is first recognize the problems. What is the problem, right? Because if somebody becomes the president and earns $100 million in one term, don't get attracted by that, right? And then if somebody is doing something for alleviating other people's suffering and living in a very simple home, wearing very simple dresses, don't get ashamed to do the same thing, because these are the moral courage that you have to build. And as long as you are morally strong to recognize the truth and differentiate between right and wrong, that's how you learn how to face the problems. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes, if I can answer.
Well, I take my students many places and have interviewed many wonderful people. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm listening, as you say, you're watching the quality of someone's mind and thinking and the clarity of their thinking. Mm-hmm. So as I'm listening to you, I'm seeing a lot of clarity in your thinking. Mm-hmm. There's a special quality or a special intelligence that we have to be able to see what is true, to know what truly matters, and the courage to act on it. Mm-hmm. We don't start out this way. Mm-hmm. Or maybe we start out this way, but we lose it, who knows? Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering for you, for the clarity of mind that you have, and for the quality of your actions in the world, was there a turning point somewhere in your life where suddenly your mind opened up to this possibility of seeking what is true? Was there a change point for you in your life, or was it a more gradual?
Well, firstly, I'm almost humbled to hear what you said about my mind. I never thought it was so clear. I never thought I had anything to offer, but thank you for that. And I didn't have any dramatic openings or turning points in my life. I'm very grateful to my parents, because although I'm a girl, they really treated me like a precious child. And they gave me all the education possible. Although it was so difficult, because when we first came to live in India, we didn't have anything. So my education is actually by my mother selling her jewelries and paying for my education. Not that I'm highly educated, I just have a bachelor's degree, that's all. And then I think the sense of responsibility as a Tibetan, that was very strong in me from very small. And I somehow felt that I'm free in this world as a free Tibetan. I have the right to say whatever I can. I have to use this freedom for the sake of our people inside. This was, if you call it, a turning point in my mind. This really gave me a lot of responsibility. And then therefore in college, in school, everywhere, the moment I had a chance to talk about Tibet, I used to do that and join clubs that talked about international affairs. So I think it just grew like that. And then learning more about life, I think I learned so much from the community itself. And then when His Holiness gives teachings, he teaches us what's wrong, what's right, what really makes sense in life. And then we have lots of sayings which really tell you that everything that looks so glamorous today is not there forever. So you do something more meaningful. So all these, hearing things here and there, and it accumulates in you. And then you tend to not to deviate from there in your daily life. And then I think, since you asked it very sincerely, I would like to answer as sincerely as possible. Then I'm very fortunate to be married to the man that I'm married today. He is a very radical person. No customs or old systems would make sense to him. he's always saying, this doesn't make any sense. You know, very often I have to say, why not? Because I can't see that. But I think constantly living with somebody like that makes you also think in a way, that way. And I think it's really helped me to see things differently. So it's good to choose right partners in life. Not for money, not for fame, but for values in life. Then it really carries on, you know. So then working in the community, then working for the nuns, all of this are just in the same line. And then if I have anything today, I owe this all to all of that. Yeah.
I noticed that when I came here in 2007. That's why I was so dedicated to bringing my students back.
Thank you.
Because I think it's most important that they learn values from the people who are living the values that they're talking about. If you don't mind, often what we will do in an interview is have what I call the conversation of gifts. So I'm wondering if you could maybe, some of you could say something that you heard that her say today that touched you in some way. Okay.
Well, I just noticed from a common theme almost from all of our interviews, and that you also mentioned today, was to find the truth in everything. Not to just hear it from someone else who you may have the highest respect for, but to, with everything they say, it's not going to be meaningful unless it's true for you. And to really dissect every truth. So that's something that I found that I do a lot, is I sort of just take it in from other people and say, oh, well, that makes sense because it makes sense to them. So now I'm going to try and have things make sense for me. So thank you for that.
That's wonderful.
When you're talking about compassion and kindness, I really liked what you said about when it knocks on your door, it's really hard to open. And to me, that just says it's a lot harder to practice. It goes back to the whole values thing, that you can say that you have these values and that you're getting them from somewhere, but when they're put to the test, are you really going to stick to them?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
I liked when you were talking about sacrifice and how it depends on what you're sacrificing for, and how it wasn't a sacrifice for you, it's something you believed in and something you wanted to spend time doing.
Yes.
I really liked what you said about simplicity and how that will ultimately bring more long-lasting happiness. But I loved how you acknowledged how difficult it is to live simply. And I'm just starting to really admire people who can live so simply, and I'm starting to see how much happier they are than those of us that don't live so simply.
Yes. I think it's also very important in one's life who you choose. We have a concept, the Tibetan culture. We say you take your life as 60 years, span of 60 years of life, together with your partner. And the first 20 years, you're very young, excited, and you just don't know what's going on. Then the next 20 years, you are together, men and women. You have responsibilities, but then things are again a little bit different. You know, you have your own wants and not wants and all of that. But the last 20 years, you're going to share your values with each other. Not the so-called pleasures, not the wealth, not anything, but your values. So if you plan your life that way, then you're bound to have a good companionship all your life. Otherwise, today, people get married, they get separated so quickly, and they have so many excuses for separating. And some say, oh, I decided to separate because she or he just stopped my growth. You know, you have that saying, don't you?
Yes.
When I heard that, I was quite surprised, because I said, how could anyone stop your growth? In fact, if somebody's really, you know, demanding a lot of patience from you, it's making you grow, because it's giving you a chance to be patient, right? And then also we are talking about nonviolence and this and that in the world. If you can't create that in your own family, forget talking about it for the world. So everything starts with the home. But once you decide to get married, you've got to have certain commitment. You've got to respect each other for what you are. And then you will enjoy your companionship forever. And you don't have to keep on changing your partner for a better partner. Yeah. So I'm glad you took that on. I hope and pray that you get a good partner. So let me just leave one word with all of you. When we talk about nonviolence, the tip or trick about it is don't cling on to things when it doesn't happen according to how you think. Like when you have a quarrel with somebody and say many bad things to each other, but try to separate that from the person. Whatever that person said to you, don't cling onto it and don't grip onto it. Just let it go and start afresh with that person. Because it is possible. It's just our ego that it doesn't allow. And then it creates so much of unpleasantness in the meantime. That is not needed for either side. So why create that, right? And anyway, not to clinging onto things will make your life much happier. Okay? So if it makes sense, just take it with you. If not, forget it. It made a lot of sense to me in my domestic life, in my public life, everywhere. Yeah.
One of the things that we learned from Angeles Arian, who's a wonderful anthropologist, is she talks about the word respect, from respectare, always to look again.
Yes, yes. That is so wonderful. Love and respect. You know, don't lose that true love and affection, and then respect. Then everything will fall into their places, I think. Yeah. Okay, thank you.